Oh, hello everybody. Here it is, Sunday, October 23rd, I think. Moving right along to November here. Don't have a whole lot going on here in the U.S., a pretty quiet evening, so that's why I've titled this video the Stagnant Weather Blues. Let's see here. Let me get my window set up. Okay. You notice one interesting pattern we have here. High pressure here. There's low pressure up in Quebec. It's quite showing up. Hang on a second. Let me fix my windows. Okay, there we go. High pressure in the southeast U.S., low here, and a low right there, and high pressure up here. And as a result, we get a deformation zone pattern. Let me draw that out for you. Maybe you can kind of see that in the wind field here. You might recognize this from certain weather textbooks. There's our deformation zone. And as a result, one pattern we get from this is convergence in this area here and out in the Midwest. I'm going to put C there for convergence. And we also get divergence up here. And right in the middle, it's indeterminate. So a lot of times when we're expecting severe weather and we've got a cold front moving in from the north, we look for this area here in the center to not really favor any storm initiation. Those tend to be kind of along the edges, like here and here. So I do kind of look at the streamline field on a severe weather day and see if that pattern is showing up. As I've mentioned, high pressure in the southeast U.S., and we had that over Texas this morning, and it was a pretty cool morning. But we're starting to develop that southerly flow here, starting to warm up. And we're starting to see cyclogenesis out in the western U.S. Check that out here. See the temperatures coming up in the southwest. There's Phoenix up to 94, 93 there at Lake Havasu City. And most of the western U.S. is under this southerly flow here. Once you get offshore, we do pick up a lot of 50s out here, so it's possible that there's a front in this area here along the Cascades. We'll look for that on the thickness charts. In fact, why don't we just switch over to that? It looks like something going on here in Southern California. That could be an upper level system. We'll see if we can look for that on the charts. All right, here we have 0Z. And we'll go ahead and paint on the thickness. Let me switch my windows over to make sure that you can see what I'm showing. Yeah, it appears I need to center this. Okay, here we go. I'm going to draw the fronts on. You can see a little bit of a thickness gradient offshore. Let me just draw the thickness gradients. And you can see these actually form boxes with the isotherms. Where you have the boxes, that's going to be where you have advection taking place. These are advection areas. And even though we do have a gradient, in this area here in the Dakotas, there's not as much advection. So it's kind of indeterminate in this area. So you can have that, you know, a gradient with no advection. So let me draw out the fronts. There goes our old system in the northeast U.S. And I do need to acknowledge I forgot to cover that yesterday. There was a lot going on up there, but I've had my too many pans on the fire with different parts of the U.S. here. Next system will certainly cover that. Okay, we've got a bit of a lee side low right there in Alberta, and warm front extending down into the Dakotas like that. So there's our frontal setup here. Just put on the barbs for that very quickly so it makes a little more sense. I really need to get my tablet working. This would go a lot better. I'm doing this with a mouse. Okay. And we've probably got a bit of a trace of a occluded front even further back. So maybe in here, not in Quebec. Here, the actual low pressure center is kind of leaked up with the baroclinic zone. So don't have that occluded low yet. But as this goes into a more mature form of development, we will see that low there detach and move northward. You'll be able to watch that on the charts tomorrow. So we're going to look for low pressure up in Quebec in this area. And the new system out around Newfoundland. That would be a very interesting place to move to. The other day I was looking at some Google Street images of St. John's in this area. That would be a really neat place to be in the wintertime. Get to see these low pressure areas from the northeast U.S. move up here and really get going. It's kind of unfortunate the media tends to stop covering them when they move that far north. Okay, let's see. Okay, moving forward into next week. Looks like we get active out on the western coast. Like a new system moving through the Midwest right there. Kind of a backdoor front. Here comes another system on Friday. This is 1 week from now. This is kind of like a little Alberta Clipper coming through the Dakotas. So that's going to move into the Midwest over the weekend. It's like a pretty good push of cold air right there. So it will be kind of blustery a couple of days before Halloween there in the Chicago, Cleveland, Indianapolis area. There it goes into the eastern U.S. October 30th. Then for Halloween, let's look at that forecast. Here's the November 1st at 60 chart, so this is going to be about 1 in the morning. And wow, we've got a pretty good push of very blustery weather in Quebec. So this looks like a very strong front right in this area here, affecting the Maritimes. Almost affecting the Maritimes. And then the tail end of that kind of trails into a warm front there in Minnesota and Saskatchewan. There's the edge of that, and that trails further forward to another front like that. After that, let's see here. Yeah, there we go. See that little trough right there? That's the cold front right there. So that's the next system approaching the northwest. And here we do have an occluded front all the way onto the Gulf of Alaska. And then out here in the Central Plains, we just have a lee side trough all the way from Lubbock in Denver up to Rapid City and Glasgow, Montana. And it looks like we have a little bit of a cutoff flow here. See that little cutoff appearance in the thickness field? So that's probably going to give Southern California a bit of rain right around Halloween. See if we can find that on the upper air charts. See what's going on here. Okay, moving forward from tonight. Looks like some good troughing out on the west coast right here. Bit of a ridge in the central U.S. right there. Then move forward. Very strong height falls off the coast right there. And that apparently shears off a cutoff flow right there off the California coast. Looks like another one moving on down, so things are getting stormy there in California, and they definitely need that. So Halloween, there's or the day after, there's our cutoff flow over the southwest U.S., and that looks like it affects Texas by November 3rd. And one thing that I have noticed on this run, you remember yesterday we were talking about this very strong velocity field out in the west and how we were going to get very strong ridging along the west coast. You can see it's backed off from that. So right there, not as much ridging in Western California. That seems like yet another example of how the GFS tends to back away from cold scenarios. So I'm not sure exactly why that is, but it's possible it overdoes the ridging in that part of the U.S. Maybe there's a bit of a bias there. However, overall, it looks like things do get stormy out west. See these velocity fields up to 150 knots, and that's quite a bit different from what we have now. Maybe 120 knots right there in a very limited area, central part of the ocean. Okay, and one other thing I was going to show you very quickly is the very strong cyclogenesis we had along the west coast later in the run. This is going to be, let's see, where was that? Yeah, right here. This is 324 hours. Got a good 950 millibar low, and that's about what we would see with a Category 3 hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. So how come we don't see 100-knot winds around these storm systems? I'll give you a very quick look, looking at geostrophic balance. And in these northerly latitudes, the Coriolis force is stronger. The component of the Earth's rotation is stronger. So that affects the balance of forces. When you have a parcel of air moving across the Pacific Ocean, we did an example here. I pulled an example off the internet that uses water. But we can use this with air the same way because air is a fluid for all intents and purposes. So that bit of air moving through the wind field, it's affected by pressure gradient, which pulls the air towards the low pressure area here. So that's basically kind of like rolling downhill. And that's a form of kinetic energy. So that's expending kinetic energy. However, that's balanced out the other way by the Coriolis force because we're at a very northerly latitude compared to the Gulf of Mexico, where the Coriolis force is a lot weaker. So we get a stronger pull by the Coriolis force, and you can see that kind of pulls the parcel uphill. So that takes away from the kinetic energy of that parcel. And as a result, we get a weaker velocity. It's like the parcel rolling uphill. It's going to lose velocity as it does that. So as a result, with these northerly systems, we can have very deep cyclogenesis, especially up in the northern part of Canada, but you'll see very weak wind fields, like 10 to 20 knots up there with these very deep systems. Now, that's not to say they don't get very strong winds. A lot of the polar lows they get up there are very convective, and they can get basically the equivalent of downburst winds, very gusty conditions. But synoptic scale strong winds, those are going to be on the weak side because of what I showed you right here. So we do use the geostrophic balance on a day-to-day basis when we're looking at weather systems. And I'll try to go into this in more detail, because there are also effects when you have curvature of the wind flow. For example, we see that with upper air conditions. See that very strong ridging? That's curvature right there, and that also can have an effect on the balance of forces. And that's something I'll probably show you in an upcoming video here as we get deeper into that. I do want to cover a little bit more practical forecasting, maybe cover different areas as we do these videos. And that way I can kind of title them with different subjects, and you can go in and search my channel to find those and get more information. So if there's different areas you want to cover, let me know, and then as I go through my book projects, I'll try to pick different things to look at. Okay, let's see. I think that's about it. Yeah, that's about all I got for my charts here. Let me just check over to chat and say hello to everybody. Hello to Michael and Ron and Sarah, and got two Michaels here, Michael Burrell and Mike Eastwick. Anyway, hello to you guys, and I definitely invite you to chat, and I'll say hello when you're all in there. And I'll try to find something different to cover then. Anyway, just to let you know, on Halloween, thinking about doing a presentation from the front porch, so we'll try doing some weather and weather forecasting some trick-or-treaters and see how that works out. That'll be fun. Okay, so yeah, that's all I've got for tonight. Anyway, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you tomorrow night. Thanks.